Dear friends, dear colleagues, members of the Buffalo AKG Art Museum, good evening, and thank you for joining us here in the Stanford and Judith Lipsey Auditorium. I would like to begin by sharing with you a statement about the land on which we are gathered today. The Buffalo AKG Art Museum acknowledges the land our campus resides on as the traditional home of the Seneca Onondaga. We honor the Native American members of our community who continue to bear the burden of a history of displacement as they live nearby and among us. We are grateful to live, work, and learn on this land. Honored members, thank you so much for joining us for Voices in Contemporary Art, a conversation with Stanley Whitney. Today is a day of firsts. This is our very first members opening on the Buffalo AKG's new campus, and it is wonderful to be here together with you after so many years of construction. We could not have realized the AKG's $230 million campus expansion and development project without your dedication and generosity. You are our pulsating heart. Thank you. Stanley Whitney, How High the Moon, is the first career retrospective of the work of Stanley Whitney, one of America's foremost artistic voices. This is also the first time in recent memory that we have had more than 800 members register for a members opening. And as you can see, it's not a finished sauna yet, but it will be if our air conditioning doesn't work, which it will. It is truly fitting that Stanley Whitney's stunning exhibition is the occasion for this incarnation of enthusiasm. Earlier today, Mayor Byron Brown of the City of Buffalo joined us to formally proclaim tomorrow, February 9th, 2024, as Stanley Whitney Day in the City of Buffalo. So for the first time, it gives me great pleasure to wish all of you happy Stanley Whitney Day. Before I turn it to our speakers, I want to thank each and every one of you, our members and our guests. You give us the support that allows us to present incredible exhibitions, organize stimulating talks such as tonight's, and do all of the work we do to serve our community. Thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts. To all of our out-of-town guests, welcome to Buffalo, a city that will steal your heart. I would also like to thank the extraordinary individuals who represent Stanley and his work. Thank you to Gagosian Gallery, whose extremely generous support has made this exhibition possible. Andrew Fabricant and his colleagues at Gagosian uplift the art of our time and make our work possible. Thank you, Gagosian, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, colleagues. Thank you also to Ben Loveless and Klaus Nudenhake of Galerie Nudenhake, who are with us tonight. Like the AKG, you seek the artistic revolutions of tomorrow before tomorrow thinks of them as such. Now I am pleased to introduce the amazing Stanley Whitney. For more than 50 years, Stanley has pursued a life of artistic innovation and exploration with an ethos of dogged determination and compassion. The joy of Whitney's work is not in its final arrival at a single finite destination. The joy is in its endless ambulation, in creating seemingly limitless variations on a theme that becomes a pulsating heart of creative energy. You might think about it like this. There are close to 8 billion pulsating human hearts in the world today. They all resemble each other in structure, format, and function. And yet, they are all different, and they pump life into our very being as individuals and as one collective humanity. That is what Stanley's works do. They pulsate art into life and life into art. Stanley, thank you for honoring us with your presence here in Buffalo and with your exceptional body of work. It is truly a privilege to share your genius with the world. Stanley will be joined in conversation by Cathleen Chaffee, the Buffalo AKG's amazing Charles Balbach Chief Curator and the organizer of Stanley Whitney, How High the Moon. Their discussion will last roughly 30 minutes, followed by time for questions from you, our honored members and guests. Please join me in welcoming Stanley Whitney and Cathleen Chaffee.
Okay. Janne promised 30 minutes. It might be a
I
little.
think 25.
Yeah, it might be 40. It might be 45. We're gonna see. Oh my goodness. All right, let me make sure we thanked everybody who needed to thank briefly. First, all of you. I know Janne thanked our members, but we have been planning for this moment since before you all knew when the building was going to be done. We've been talking about this show for so long, and it has been our aim that this inaugurate the new campus. This is an exhibition that celebrates an artist long overdue for a survey. That's something that this museum has done before, and also celebrates the new, which is something we do every single time we open our doors. We're so happy that you're here, and so happy all of you are here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to take just a second to, oh, did I cut out? Okay. Oh wait, I was told if I cut out, I was supposed to put this on the table. Hold on a second. Okay, now that's going to fix everything. Okay. I want to take a second to thank the lenders who are in the audience. I won't name all of you, but without your willingness to part with these works that I know bring so much joy into your lives, this exhibition would not have been possible. Thank you so much. I want to thank Stanley Whitney's family who are here with us tonight, his dear friends, Ann Patch, his studio director, who had a hand in every aspect of this exhibition. Yay, all of you, yay, thank you. And I cannot start this conversation without taking a second to thank the AKG team, our registrars, our art preparators, imaging and visual resources, publications, advancement, facilities, and so many more staff are as proud and excited as the curators are here tonight. So thank you very much. And finally, Stanley, it is such an honor to be sitting next to, and have gotten to sit next to now for a long time, working on this show, someone who is without a doubt one of the greatest living American artists. And I think this show is going to do the work of letting everybody know, if they didn't know, just how towering that achievement really is.
Wow.
Thank you. So here we go. Here we go. It's a high bar.
Really?
So you can see, let me hear it. I'll turn this a little if you want to, because we can't really look over our shoulders. So you can look at the screen here. Okay. So I want to just take a couple seconds to say sort of how we got here. I said this is, and as you know, this is the first survey of any kind of Stanley Whitney's work, but it's by far not the first exhibition, not the first opportunity people have had to see some of these works. So I show you just a second, this is one of the ways Stanley Whitney lives with his art, and you'll see this kind of coming up throughout the images here. A juxtaposition of influences and his own work. There's a painting of Marina Adams's there on the left.
That's right.
So I said this isn't the first show. There was an important institutional show of Stanley's work curated by Lauren Haynes in 2015 at the Studio Museum. It just looked at recent work, but it was an important show in New York City. And then in 2017, there was a really significant installation of his work at an exhibition that happens once every 5 years in Kassel, Germany, called Documenta. And this was the first time, I have to say, that I really started to think, oh, wow, this artist I thought I knew is not an artist I thought I knew. To see your work in series, to see a whole room of your work, was completely transformative. And that, among a number of other things, started kicking off the exhibition. And then this museum ended up having the privilege to acquire a painting of Stanley's in 2017. And this came after our director, Janne Seren, who you know, had been talking and thinking about Stanley's work a little too. We had been discussing it, and Klaus Nordenhake had also been encouraging us to do a studio visit. We didn't even go to the studio to just chat. We went to the studio to try to pick a painting because we really wanted to bring Stanley into the collection. And I remember sitting around talking with him that day, and we talked so much about Clifford Still. And I thought, oh, like, this isn't just a painting. I was hoping this was now going to be a longer conversation, which it, of course, turned out to be. So Stanley came to Buffalo, 2019. Niagara Falls, the requisite Niagara Falls shot. And this is, we were already planning the retrospective at this point. And really, right around here is when, in 2019, before we even closed our doors, we had started thinking about, what do we want to open the campus with? How are we going to show the collection? What's the story we're going to tell? And there was, you all, many of you, the local audience members, and know that we opened with the collection, kind of in entirety. We told a whole collection story for the first sort of 6 months of being open. One of the ideas we had early on, though, was to borrow works from various artists and kind of install some small solo rooms. And Stanley's name was on that list. We talked about your work. And I remember it was simultaneously brought up. We were talking with the curators and with Janne, and we immediately said, oh, that's a terrible idea. Because if we show 4 paintings of Stanley Whitney's at this museum, we're missing an unbelievable opportunity. Somebody needs to do a retrospective. And it was not very long later that we said, well, we should do it. We should be the ones to do it. And we're lucky to be here doing it. Okay, I'm seeing if I missed anything. Anyway. It was a body of work that deserved so much more. So he came and saw the campus before we closed. While the museum was closed, we worked together to organize an exhibition of your work in Venice.
Yeah, that was a great exhibition.
Yeah, so this is looking at paintings you made in Italy over the years. Yeah. This is kind of as COVID delayed our reopening a little bit. The show in Venice helped keep this conversation going. And then now this is you walking into the exhibition just the other day. So here we are. This is the show in Buffalo. Yeah. This is you. So now we have to back up a little bit. So that's how we got here. You want to go back to that?
No, I'm going to see the next one.
Oh. So a picture like this kind of encapsulates what it means to organize a retrospective. We look back at student work. We look back at the life path you took and how it got you here to becoming an artist in the first place. And that's a lot of looking backward. What did you think about that prospect when you first started considering it? The work it was going to take. The work it was going to take to look backwards to do a retrospective.
I was wondering how far back we'd go. Yeah. You weren't pretty far back.
So obviously these works aren't in the exhibition. This is research that you'll see in the book.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see. I mean, thinking about that work, and at the time I had no idea what I was doing.
As an artist? As an artist,
yeah. I mean, trying to figure out what I really wanted to sort of dive into, looking at art, discovering artists. But I didn't grow up in a family that looked at art or knew what art was. I lived in Philadelphia and I never went to the museum.
Yeah.
I had to go to Kansas City. I think I went to Columbus, Ohio to go to art school when I'm living in Philadelphia, so that says how much I knew.
You were, Columbus, the center of the art world, Columbus, Ohio, as we know.
So, I mean, you're living in Philadelphia, you're going to Columbus, Ohio art school. You don't know what you're doing.
But in Columbus, you did first kind of fall in love with Cezanne, which I have up on the screen.
Yeah, I really did. I went to Columbus. I was thinking about that school. It was connected to the museum, and there were this particular Cezanne, and I fell in love with that painting. And then I just thought I would definitely be a painter. I didn't go to school to be a painter. I went to school to be an illustrator, and
It's like a practical job.
Practical job, make some money. And in those days, art schools were, this is 64, art schools really were like, trade schools. I mean, it wasn't like there was a dorm or you went to school 9 to 5 and shut down and you lived on your own.
And what'd you live on?
Would you?
Yeah.
You just had an apartment. You live with people. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, like you said, you lived on your own. You're a student. You're
Well, I
working.
mean, it wasn't a dorm like a cafeteria, or no one looked for. You were sort of on your own. You just like
Right.
you're going to like a trade school. So you just like I had an apartment I lived in, and just went to school in the day.
And then you transferred to Kansas City. This is, I think, a picture from Kansas
I transferred
City.
to Kansas City because Kansas City schools begin to give VFAs. That way you could get out of the draft, and also student college loans and yeah. So because the school I went to in Columbus didn't offer degrees, and my draft board said it had to be a school with a degree.
They got your number.
Otherwise, you get drafted.
Yeah.
So Kansas City had built a dorm, and they were just recruiting people. So then I went on to Kansas City.
So during this time when you're in Kansas City, and I'm looking at this image on the left, but I could go to another one. Like, who are the artists that you're like? So you're starting. You kind of see Cezanne, and I remember
Well,
you know.
there was a lot of artists I was looking at. I mean, Cezanne, Soutine, all the Spanish artists, Velázquez, Goya, mostly all figurative artists. I was looking at, thinking about. I was just trying to figure out sort of what painting was and what I didn't know what I wanted to paint. So I paint a lot of self-portraits or friends' portraits and just things like that.
What was like? When did you during that time? When did you figure out you weren't going to do something practical? You were going to do the impractical thing of not being.
I never thought it was impractical. I just thought it was just something I love to do. I mean, as a student, you have a lot of freedom, and you're sort of, you're sort of living in those days. I was living sort of a bohemian life, art school, and I didn't know. I knew I wanted to paint. That's all I did. I just painted, So I didn't know much else.
So I told you before I was going to ask you, could you talk about, so 68, you're kind of getting close to the end of your undergrad years. Can you talk about where you were kind of as an artist or mentally in 68, summer of 68 in particular, because we're
Summer of
looking
68,
at,
that's what I meant Philip Guston. I was, the whole idea of what I painted, I used to paint a lot of self-portraits and different things like that, and that kind of died on me. So I didn't know I didn't know what my subject matter was, what I was going to paint. So luckily I got to go to this summer program in Skidmore, and Philip Guston was there, so he liked my drawings. I think my way to my drawings, his way of his drawings is very similar. So he liked what I did, and so when I was drawing a lot of things outside, landscapes and things like that, things I normally didn't do, and I was slowly trying to figure out what I was going to paint. But actually from 68 probably to, I would say 78, I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, what I mean by that, I didn't know what my subject matter was. I mean, I was working all the time, trying things. And the thing about New York was, and being in New York, where you want to go to New York, you could see a lot of art.
Yeah.
So I was looking at a lot of art, a lot of things, discovering artists, discovering things, and then you go home to your studio and you try this and try that and try to put something together, what I liked. There's a lot of things going on. There's a war going on, Vietnam War, then there's all the Black Power thing going on. I mean, even in Kansas City, if the Black Panthers came by, I would tell people, tell them I'm not home. Because I couldn't defend myself in terms of, what Black Power was, and I wanted to paint. So it's like, what was I doing for the race?
At that point, you wanted to paint abstraction too.
Well, I was trying to figure out, I was doing, by the time I was with Gus, I was trying to figure out abstraction, yeah.
And meanwhile, he's trying to figure out figuration.
Yeah, I didn't know that about him. I mean, because I remember we were downtown in Saratoga Springs, and he said, why don't you come downtown and paint this, downtown? Or I would say, why would I want to paint downtown? So, and he said, one time he got very excited with his car, and well, the only thing about that was that we saw this red Cadillac, interior, I think it might have been white interior, red, and he got so excited about this Cadillac convertible, and he was so excited, and I thought, this old man, I thought he was old.
He was like 50.
Yeah, like 50.
Yeah.
But this old man is so excited about this car. And I thought, what's going on here? Because he was more excited he seemed more excited than me, and I was like 20, you know what I mean, something like that. So that was really, I thought, and that always stuck with me. I thought, wow, that's really, he's so excited. So that was really, so I didn't know what I was doing, but I was slowly, with Gustin, I learned a lot about how a painting put together. He really showed me how a painting is put together. And that was a big thing, because I really was kind of through school on my own. I didn't have any really great professors. I was just trying things and doing things. I was very much involved with, say, besides, say, I was really liked Edwin Monk, who I still like a lot. So I had all these different artists I liked. It didn't make sense to me, subject matter, or what I was painting. So I was just trying to find out what was my subject matter.
Yeah.
Where could I go? Where did I fit in? And so I was just struggling with that. But but at the same time, I enjoyed being in the studio. I enjoyed it.
You went in and put in the time.
I enjoyed being in the studio working. I enjoyed making art. I really enjoyed drawing, painting. I just enjoyed it. Even if things didn't come out good, I enjoyed it.
This is a painting you've never shown, and we won't linger here too much, but you were looking at like Peter Young, Larry Poons, and also
I got to New York, and there was the color field people,
Yeah.
and I really like color a lot, so I saw that, and I Poons' painting I saw a lot, and so I looked at this sort of Indian art, and I should have just copied that. I didn't.
Like tantric art.
Yeah. I just thought, I can't copy it, it's not mine. I just should have copied it, and I didn't. And so
you would have been successful if you.
Probably, maybe.
Yeah.
And so then I made these paintings. Got me into Yale. And this is the only one I have of this group of work.
So it was useful.
Well, they got me into Yale, and that was useful. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's really, I couldn't find, I don't think, a single, maybe there's one or two pictures of you when you were at Yale. There's not a lot. So this is kind of a placeholder for 1970 to 72 when Stanley is doing his MFA. He got recruited to go to Yale for your MFA.
Yeah.
And you lived in your studio.
I did. I lived in my studio. They thought that I was a janitor.
Yeah.
At night, because I'd be there at night, living in my studio. And so if people saw me or security saw me, they thought I was a janitor. So, it was really, so I could do that. I did my studio for like about, half the year, semester, something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I remember it was the promise of a free studio, but then you also got to pay to live there.
Yeah, because I had no money. So I got a scholarship to go there,
Right.
and a little bit of money, but not much money. So I didn't have a place to live for a while. You know what I mean?
Anyway, great portrait of Stanley on the left by Barclay Hendricks.
Yeah, by Barclay Henry.
And then this is like your first solo show, I think. I think that's right.
Yeah, I got and then I got an offer. Actually, in my last semester at Yale, I got an offer to teach at University of Rhode Island. And all of a sudden, I had money. I had money. I bought a car, and that was my start. I lived in New Haven. I drove to Rhode Island, and actually, this guy, Richard Frankel, dear man who passed away. Gave me a job. It was wonderful because someone was on leave, and he gave me a job, and he paid me the money of almost maybe not full professor, but associate professor. All of a sudden, I had money.
Yeah.
So then I started really eating everything I could.
So
it wasn't a good idea.
If somebody had told you then that you were going to teach for 40 years, would you have believed him?
No, and I'm sorry. No, I wouldn't believe them.
Yeah.
I don't even believe I did it, but I did.
Yeah. I mean, Stanley knows this. I've spent throughout working on the show, I tried so hard to draw him out on teaching and talk to some of your students because
yeah, you did.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, you did.
Because anyway, after Rhode Island, you started teaching at Tyler.
I started teaching at Tyler. It was a really, it was good for me. I mean, I found I could do that. I could teach and didn't get in the way of my work. I could teach, and I had money. I paid my rent, and because I wasn't a carpenter. I couldn't do carpentry. I couldn't do things like that. I wasn't really a handyman. I was awful at things like that.
Yeah.
So I couldn't, and so teaching was a thing I could do, And it didn't get in my way of my studio. You know, it didn't get in the way of me painting. So I'd be in, when you teach, and you would teach maybe 2.5 days a week, and then I had the rest of the week to work, and then your summer's off. So it seemed like a good deal to me. So I really just could work. I could work. So that was a big thing for me, that job. Because I couldn't. A lot of people I knew would work and then paint and then have to look for a job and paint, and I really couldn't do that.
You did that for a little while.
Well, I tried it, but I really couldn't do it because I get lost in my studio, and I even had a car, and I'd park on the street, and I get tickets because I forget, like, oh, I have to go back, I move the car.
Yeah.
And so I ended up all these tickets, you know what I mean? And but you know, I knew Rauschenberg, and Bob paid all my tickets. Rauschenberg paid all my tickets. He took care of it for me.
Speaking of, yeah, this is a moment to say a second about Rauschenberg. We're getting ahead, it doesn't matter.
Sorry.
It doesn't matter, no.
Right,
We'll come back to that,
Okay.
I guess. So this is 72, this is the earliest painting in the show, and you made this as you're finishing Yale. I remember you said, and this, you painted it, I remember you said you frustrated, because people looked at this and they asked you how you'd made it, and you said that wasn't the question you wanted people asking about your work.
Well, this particular work, well, they got more and more about, you know, it's acrylic. I painted on the floor. I used a piece of cardboard to make those marks, and that sort of light yellow. I did that with a mop. Al Hell was my teacher, and I had the big brush, and Al Hell said, "Why don't you get a mop?" I said, "Mop?" He said, "Try it with a mop." So I did it with a mop. Everyone in those days was experimenting with how to paint.
All the process painting. Yeah,
process painting, you know, like Ed Clark had a broom. So everyone was trying different kinds of things. It came out of sort of Pollock, you know, that idea, and trying to come up with something new and different and innovative. So Al was very much interested in me doing, and so I made this painting, and everyone liked it. I mean, one time, Clement Greenberg came and said, "I really like your painting." This painting, and I said, "Oh, thanks." And then I walked away, and Al said, "You idiot." I thought, what should I have said? I didn't know. I had no idea about how to really work my career, something like that. I really was just in the studio painting, you know. And so yeah, this was a painting that and in those days, you have to realize, New Haven, there was still the Black Panther trials going on. They had just moved back into the A&A building, the building where the art school was. And it was a small program. It was only like 10 graduate students in each class, like 20 students. So it was really good for me, because I really, after being in New York a year and a half, after being in New York maybe 2-3 years, all of a sudden I had all my time to paint, you know, and so that was really very important. So I tried a lot of different kinds of things.
So the next kind of 10 years or so, and we'll move back and forth in time a bit. This is a studio photo. And then you're coming into the show at sort of the moment. This is an installation photo from upstairs. You're coming into the exhibition and sort of seeing works like this that you're making in the late 70s. There's this jump between 72 and kind of 79 in the exhibition, where there's just works on paper.
Yeah, because, you know, I was beginning to, you know, I kind of spent so much money at the art supply store trying to make paintings, and I was so in debt to Pearl Paint and MasterCard. And I thought that, you know what, Stanley, why do this stuff on canvas? I started going back to drawing and trying to figure out drawing. I know my paintings are so much about color, but really for me, I really think that drawing really is the key. You know, the color I have, I just always the colors. I always could make something better with color. But drawing, so I was trying to figure out sort of what my subject matter was, and so I went back, I thought, sort of throwing all these paintings away. You know, I had so many acrylic paintings away. I think when I met Marina, and one time I moved to my loft, and I had behind this wall, I had stacks of paintings. I would do a painting and throw it over the wall. No, because they're all awful, I thought. And then we got rid of all those things, and then I thought, you know, just use paper, go to paper instead of canvas. So I slowly, through the Mylar and the pen and ink drawings, because I at this point I was thinking a lot about Van Gogh's drawings, you know, and I bought a big book on Van Gogh, and I worked in pen and ink, so I couldn't erase anything, and started making these drawings. And I was thinking about black and white, but to make it as colorful as color. So that was a those were big steps for me. You know, being a painter, you know, things you do that are physically very easy, but very hard mentally.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that was a big thing, you know. So as a painter, you're thinking, I mean, you could do this, but anyway, you have to how you come to it. I think of like Mondrian, going from a black line to a blue line to a red line, how long it took him to figure out that, which is physically very easy,
Right.
but mentally very hard. So you have all these, it's a really mental game. You know, you're really trying to figure out these things and what's important to you and how you're going to pursue it.
I remember, I mean, you know, I talked to some of your students thinking about the show, and there were 2 lessons I remember a lot of them took away. And one was that drawing is key. If you can draw, this is what you taught them. If you can draw, you'll never be lost. You always have a way out of a problem.
Yeah, because, you know, I always think about, you know, Rothko, I don't want to paint myself in a corner, I have to slice my wrist. So drawing, I think drawing, and Bryce too. Bryce was always very important to me, who just passed away, Bryce Martin. Because Bryce, even though his paintings were so difficult to make, he always drew. I mean, if you saw the paintings, you didn't see the drawing, but he drew. Most artists I knew who were the color field people, even abstract expressionists, the drawing was in the painting. They just, yeah, and that was it. But, so I realized for me, I realized drawing would save my life. So drawing I really is the key for me.
Which is why we opened the show with it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to scroll past a few of these. These are some of your acrylics from the late 70s, and just kind of sharing some of these images. This is spanning a really interesting period in your work from the late 70s into the early 80s. I wonder if you could talk about what you're kind of trying to accomplish briefly. I know there's the switch back to oil paint, but in terms of subject matter.
Well, I'm trying to make a good painting. You know, I'm thinking about space. I'm thinking about color. I'm thinking about, you know, great in those days. First, you know, it used to be all the art world. The galleries were on 57th Street, and then everything moved to Soho. But you know, thinking about New York School in those days, I was looking at a lot of art and thinking about what I, you know, it's trying to put a recipe together. You know, it was a good recipe. And I didn't know what I was really doing. I was I wanted something really open. I wanted a lot of space. I wanted a lot of color. I was thinking about Pollock a lot, you know, the freedom there. Thinking about Rothko. I think about Mondrian. So I was like, how does this all add up? You know, those kind of things. So I liked a lot of different kinds of things. I wanted a lot in one painting. You know, I wanted the painting to have a lot in it. Like, you know, even the painting I'm making now, it's like has a lot in it. You know, a lot of different things about painting. I mean, I always think about, you know, Cezanne still, who's so important to me. So that's what I was. Subject matter was, you know, music was always important. You know, so. In my life, but that was always important. That was more important. That was there before I even was thinking about painting. So those are the things I was thinking about. I didn't know what that meant in terms of what that would look like.
Right.
You know, I didn't know what they would look like. I knew what I didn't like. I knew what I see, and I said, I don't like that. I don't like this. You know, but I didn't know what I was going to paint. That was the whole thing. I was very jealous of Barclay. You know,
Barclay Hendricks.
Because he had a studio beside me, and Barclay, he'd go in the studio, he'd paint a figure, he'd go home, and he's very comfortable in the subject matter, and I was like totally lost.
You were struggling.
I was totally lost.
Yeah.
So that it was really difficult for me, you know.
So then there's a period of travel, which you know, it starts kind of you're going out west in the
yeah. I got an
80s.
invitation to teach at Berkeley, and so we drove across country, which was great, you know, because this country is so beautiful and so big. I mean, you drive across and you just drive a line through it, but I drove across country to go teach at Berkeley, and that was really, because I wanted to get out of New York, you know. I mean, I'd been in New York since '68, and not much was happening in New York for me, you know, and so.
You mean like commercially? I mean.
Commercially.
Yeah.
No, things were happening in terms of me seeing a lot of art, you know, seeing a lot of great art. I mean, I saw a lot of great art. early on. I remember seeing all those black and white Pollocks at Marlboro, you know. There's a lot of great art on 57th Street, and I saw a lot of great art. But then I need to get out of New York. And,
You had your
know.
first solo show in New York in '84.
Yeah,
that's right.
I think of Jose Ferrer, yeah.
Or Peg, yeah,
Was
yeah.
it? Yeah, I think Jose Ferrer, maybe.
So you started showing in New York in the mid, like not getting a solo show till the mid '80s. How were the works that you're making during this period getting received? If we're looking, so now we're sort of into the early 90s.
You know, I mean, I showed some with the private dealer, Peg Austin, I think it was here in the audience somewhere, and Peg showed me in an apartment up on the West Side. It was great because that was I'm sorry, maybe Peg has photographs, but it was great because Peg had a great collection of African art, you know, in an apartment. So I had my paintings with African art. So it was a wonderful thing. But I thought, well, you know, the art team in general was not interested in my work, and I thought that was that. Jose Ferrer, started Lower East Side, started showing my work, and Jose was very good about showing my work. He's like, "I'll show your work." If anyone knew Jose, he would say, "I'll show your work."
And then you had a show.
I will do it.
You had a show with Jose where nothing sold.
Yeah, nothing sold.
And then you
Nothing
moved to
sold.
Rome, which is the next round of slides.
Well, I moved to Rome. We
Yeah.
moved to Rome because Rena and I felt like let's just get out of here. You know, I mean, nothing's happening.
I mean, I think it's so interesting though that you get to Rome and it's very shortly thereafter. I mean, some of these paintings are on view upstairs. Very shortly thereafter, you get to Rome, and you also take a trip to Egypt. You have a painting like this one where you couldn't even fit. You had to make a diptych because you had this idea for a painting that was too big to fit in the door of the studio.
Yeah.
So you get there, and you almost, I think it's really soon that you start seeing a path that you want to take.
Yeah,
direction.
I saw there's a couple of paintings I made that before I went to Rome that were beginning to happen. And when I got to Rome, well, the big thing about going to Rome, I always tell people, after I traveled across the country and did that and thought about space in terms of that kind of open space, like the Southwest kind of space, and thinking about space that way, then I go to Rome, and it's really about architecture. You know, it's like really the buildings, it's the Pantheon, it's the Colosseum, it's the ancient buildings, and even the modern buildings. I mean, it's a light, you know, because in Rome, you know, you stand in the light, it's one temperature, you stand in the dark, it's a different temperature. You're looking at Caravaggio, you're looking at paintings that don't travel. And so I'm really totally free in Rome. The race issue isn't so big in Rome. So I'm free of a lot of things. So I started really making these paintings and really, you know, and then people liked them. I didn't show them. I mean, when Al Taylor came to visit me once, and he really loved the paintings. People thought I was doing some good paintings, but I wasn't showing them. And I was moving pretty fast in those days and making paintings and, you know, making other paintings.
I mean, that's the thing, like we look at these paintings from Rome and that you made after those architectural experiences, and you only made them for a couple of years before you start making kind of the next thing. Like this is what we're looking at now.
Yeah, this is made in Rome too. Yeah, then I you know, because I started getting to the color.
Yeah.
Like the ones before that, I couldn't get to the color. It was really, you know, the thing about painting is it's paint, you know, and you really have to have and work on developing what, you know, your idea of paint is, you know, and what paint is. That's a big thing. So I was starting to have a sense and a confidence in terms of my drawing, a sense of what I want in terms of paint. When I went to Egypt, I figured out the idea of density, how dense I wanted, because I was thinking before there was space and then there was color. And then I realized, no.
Like they were two separate things.
Two separate things.
Yeah.
And then I realized, no, the space could be in the color.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was when I figured out space was the space could be in the color, then I kind of had it.
And you sort of lose any background anymore. Like you're kind of those earlier paintings.
Well, you know, I never liked the idea of background.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't like that idea of background. I was trying to get rid of the idea of background. But I wanted a lot of space. So yeah, when I did that, that was it. Egypt was the last piece of the puzzle.
Just looking at some of your smaller experimental paintings, and then this is like a really pivotal moment in the exhibition, a turning point in a way, but just another change. You know, you only made these paintings that have a lot of almost calligraphic line, this kind of gestural line. You made them for a handful of years. And then you start pushing that line out and kind of focusing in on a color that has a certain solidity.
Yeah, you know, I stopped making those paintings because, you know, I was in Europe a lot, and I got tired of seeing graffiti. You know, I saw, you know, I'd be on the train, and I mean, in Germany, some great graffiti. You know, people worked on it a long time, and along the trains, you know, you see all this graffiti. And I was looking at Morandi a lot. You know, and I loved Morandi. I loved how quiet they were. I liked how simple they were and how complicated they were, and they were so simple and so complicated. And so I just thought, you know, I wanted to sort of, I'm still thinking about how can I reinvent a gesture. You know, actually, I think Bryce did that really well with his last paintings, reinventing gesture. So I was trying to think about that, you know, what that would be. So I wanted the color to really dominate more than the hand. So I sort of went to this.
So it's around 2002. I mean, this is where the kind of 4 rows, these are the paintings that you're now by far best known for. I mean, everything we've seen up until now, most people have never seen,
Right.
if they know your work.
Right.
It's 4 rows, and you start painting them at the upper left. There's more looseness in the middle and kind of more density towards the lower registers in many ways. When you got to this moment, and this is an installation shot of some of these works from the 2000s, that you've been making these for the last 20 years.
Has it been 20 years? Yeah.
Give or take, yeah. When you got to this moment and I love this painting, you got to this moment, and for now you know this is the space in which I want to work, these are the limits that give you a certain element of freedom. Did you know that pretty soon after you started making them, or what would you say about that?
I would say I know nothing.
Good.
It's not, you know, it wasn't so much about knowing. You know, what you do is you feel your way through things. You know, it's like feeling your way through things. It's like you're sort of painting kind of blind in a way. It's feeling your way through. So it was, you know, when I was thinking about the retrospect, thinking about this painting with a lot of gesture, and thinking about why did I stop making those, you know, and I think about the graffiti part and all that, and Morandi. And now look at that, I could have made more of those. I mean, I may have made more of those if people had bought them. You know what I mean? If people were interested. I probably wouldn't have moved so fast through things. I think maybe that's true. I don't really know. But I was just, you know, moving ahead, you know, moving ahead. You know, maybe a fault of mine is I just keep moving ahead. Even in school, I would never, when I left Columbus, Ohio, I left all my paintings and moved to Kansas City, you know, and didn't take anything with me. When I moved from Kansas City to New York, you know, I left everything and they moved to New York. The paintings I painted in New York before I went to Yale, I don't have any of those. I don't know where those paintings are. I just kept, you know, moving ahead.
But so, I mean, but yeah, for the last 20 years, there's one way to look at the paintings you've been making and say, well, these haven't changed. But of course, if anybody takes 5 minutes to look at one. Yeah, well,
but I think about change in terms of Mondrian. You know, even early on, before I was painting abstract, I saw a Mondrian show at the Guggenheim when I was in school. It must have been the 60s, maybe. But you know, and taking that walk down the Guggenheim, you know, and I thought step by step, you know, and I really wanted step by step. I mean, some people would say, why don't you do this or why don't you do that? And I didn't. I wanted to really discover every step of the way. And that's something I still think about. I mean, the drawings now kind of open things up. I'm glad we did all these big drawing walls because I draw all the time. If I'm not painting, then I'm drawing on paper a lot. And so I'm just interested in seeing everything, you know, and how it sort of slowly comes into my studio, it slowly comes into my paintings. I kind of follow the painting. I told people, I follow whatever the paintings take me. If the paintings going out the door, I go out the door. If the paintings go out the window, I follow the paintings, everywhere the paintings take me. The paintings inform me in terms of what to do. But that's through studying a lot about painting, you know. It's really about studying.
In the show, you were gracious enough to share some of your sketchbooks, which you've been working in for a really long time, and these are kind of private. Well,
it wasn't a gracious.
No.
Kathleen did that. No, what happened was when we did the show in Venice, she said, "Oh, the sketchbooks. Can I see the sketchbooks?" And I was like, "The sketchbooks." I had these sketchbooks I had made in Rome, and they were almost like diaries. You know what I mean? They were almost, I was writing things down, things I read in books, right, finding titles, just thinking about things, and they were very private. And then Kathy, oh, let's do the sketchbooks, and I thought, oh, okay, we'll do that. And so then she came to see her, and I didn't. When they went through the sketchbook, I left.
Yeah, you left.
I left.
That's
I said,
right.
let them go through the sketchbook, and they showed the sketchbook, which was really fun. I mean,
Yeah.
it was really fun and really interesting, and really showed the part of my practice, you know. And
Right.
so I have hundreds and hundreds of sketchbooks.
But it's where you're working out a lot of your titles. It's where you see what you're reading, and then now they're more abstract. There's less writing in them, I think, today than
Well,
there
now
was.
right now, at this moment, there's less writing. Mostly they're like watercolors and
Yeah.
you know and things like that. But they're very important to me because when I'm not painting, because you know with oil paint things take a long time to dry. I work on sketchbooks. You know, I do drawings and I do things. So I try to do, you know, at least one drawing, or one something a day. I you know just always do something every day, even though I'm not really doing something. I try to do something every day. So the sketchbooks are very informative, and I just have a lot of sketchbooks. You know, there's lots and lots of sketchbooks.
I have a couple of images here, just some images. Some of these came out of your sketchbooks. You started sharing these in 2020.
Right.
A series of drawings. And this is during the pandemic and also Black Lives Matter movement. Some of these you'll see upstairs. Kind of a first, I think, a glimpse that some people, kind of one of the first glimpses some people had into the process that's behind your reading and things like that. That's really informing your work too.
No, I read a lot. I constantly read.
Yeah.
If I'm not painting, I'm reading. I can spend all day reading. You know, I mean, I like to read all day if I can. I mean, it's such a luxury to just read. You know, and just be able to sit home and just read. So.
And for you, how does that feed the work?
Well, you know, it's all a mental game, so it helps me to really clarify things, keeps me, you know, you want to sort of keep you mentally sharp and keep you it's like staying in shape, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So reading really helps me to clarify sort of what I'm thinking, and so when I'm in the studio, I can get to things pretty immediately, you know, because it's really thinking about how you get in the studio. Because I'm always thinking, what day am I going to paint? The day, you know, sometimes I paint some days where I don't think I'm going to paint, but I paint. Like this painting, I painted because Marina went away that day, and so I said I'd paint.
Nothing else to do.
Nothing else to do.
This is the last painting in the show. It's our second to last image. I'll stop here. But I wanted to ask you, you kind of alluded to it. I mean, you made this painting with the show in mind. It's this year, finished in 2024.
Yeah.
What is it today? And I think any artist would hate to hear somebody talk about their late work. So I actually would never think about these as your late paintings, but it's your most recent painting.
It's my most recent painting, yeah.
Oh, and your microphone's kind of falling. Can people still hear him?
Oh, can you still hear me?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So it's your most recent painting. What is it today, and is it the same maybe that it always was, that gets you in the studio?
That gets me in the studio.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
What is it that gets you to, on a painting day, what's the thing that makes you get up and go paint?
It's a bad habit now. No, it's just a habit. It's a habit. You know, it's you develop this habit. I have to paint. You know what I mean? I really am a painter. That's how I live and breathe. That's how I think. That's how I move. I sort of made myself a painter, you know, by painting so many, you know, for so many years, and that's what I do. You know, so if I don't paint, what am I going to do? So I have to paint. It's not, and I enjoy it, and I like being in the studio. I just enjoy it, you know, and I love looking at paintings. You know what I mean? I just love art. We're able now to buy some art, Marina and I, and so I just really enjoy painting. I mean, painting to me is my life. I mean, if I'm not painting, reading, I listen to a lot of music. Music's always very important to me. So those things are just I just made them part of my life. You know what I mean?
I want to say, I mean, kind of as wrapping up, that these are paintings that they're not always happy paintings, and you've said that. Not always happy, but they do bring, to me, I think, a lot of joy into the world. They bring a space for contemplation. They bring a space for being and for a sense of hope even,
Yeah.
that is rare in this world.
Well, that's the idea. They're really, like I say, they're really for people. They unfold. The more you live with them, the more they unfold.
Yeah.
You know, if you live with them, they unfold and they inform you in all kinds of ways.
Thank you for sharing them with us here.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
Sure.
This, Thanks, Dennis.
Okay.
One sec. That was great. I know many of you will probably have to go, and I did, of course, go over, as promised, a little bit. I think we have time for just a couple questions. I'm going to keep it very brief. I will repeat your question, so if you say it, I'll just repeat it quickly, and then we'll see if we can address it. Yeah, in the center. Yes.
Your early work, you clearly I would call abstract.
That's good to hear. Yeah.
The work we do now, when I was questioning freedom, abstract, I always felt like that breathe that. Because work, now you feel that it has a lot of work, a lot of structure.
Well, you know,
The question is, do you feel like there's a lot of freedom in your work now, or does the structure dominate?
no, the structure gives me the freedom. You know, I don't even see it as a grid personally. It gives me the freedom I need. Because it's sort of, it's like, it's like, I always think in terms of music, I could say in terms of someone playing, the jazz musician playing a simple song, if you get Miles Davis playing Bye Bye Blackbird, something like that, and then they can go off on it. So it gives me a lot of freedom. The color, because the color, I can do a lot of things with the color. I know what that structure is, and the color can do a lot more because of that structure.
Mm-hmm.
I had a hard time figuring what to paint, so this is a very simple structure, and so with the color, the color can get very complicated because of the structure.
You don't have to worry about one thing. You can focus on the other.
I really can pursue. I can pursue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Can
What's
you
that?
say a couple words about the kinds of things you read these days?
Well, I read everything. Right now I'm reading a great book on Miles Davis, and then I might read a book on Stalin. I might read a book about trees. I read a novel. I might read a novel, and anything that interests me. I'm not any particular thing. You know what I mean? So I just try to read things that are really, I find interesting. So all different things. I read all kinds of things, not one particular thing.
Yes.
Don't understand. What do you think in your work elicits such?
What is it in your work that elicits such emotion in viewers? If you could guess.
What? Say it again.
What is it in your work that elicits emotion, or such emotion, maybe, in viewers? Because it does. I think it's
true. The pain, I guess. I mean, it's what paintings can do. It's what paintings can be. It's what great paintings can be. I'm just following a tradition. You know what I mean? I'm trying to follow a tradition of great painters, and trying to follow that tradition. So, if you're looking at a Velázquez or Goya or Picasso or Matisse, I'm trying to follow that. I mean, it's like Clifford Still. I'm looking at Clifford Still. I'm thinking, I'm trying to follow these great people. So you're trying to add to that. It's like, it's like adding another part of the chain and making it longer and longer. So that's what I'm doing. I'm really part of this tradition. I'm not really something that's really, that different, I think. It's just a tradition of what painting is. And paintings go on people's houses, you know what I mean? They go on your wall, something you live with, something you see every day. Maybe you feel good, maybe you have the flu, maybe you're great, whatever. And you see these paintings, and how do they inform you? How do they make your life better?
I think I'm going to wrap it up with apologies. I think on that note, though, Stanley, how do they make them better? You know, we told a couple people here this today. The loans for this exhibition were not easy to get, often because we had to convince people to take Stanley's works off their walls. I had someone say, "What, I'm going to like cover the windows in my house." You know, it's taking the light out of the room. And when you ask about the emotion, I mean, everyone has a different association with the color in your work, with a memory,
Right, right.
something it opens, something it makes them afraid of,
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
you know.
With color, I think everyone sees color differently, and everyone, you know, that's what the stories are. There's lots of stories, but you bring the stories. You know, the paintings allow the stories to happen. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stanley.
Yes, sir.